Square Cow Countdowns. Hello everybody, I am Slash Raptor. So anyways, the topic is the top 10 franchises that really went downhill. Get your painkiller ready, this one might sting a bit. Now, I'm not saying that all the franchises on this list suck. All I'm saying is that when compared to the first few games, the current ones are either not as well made or too gimmicky. I'll explain why each franchise made the list, don't worry. Also, when I say franchise, I mean franchise, regardless of any changes in the development team. Although in a lot of cases, the reason the games went downhill is because the franchise was bought by another company. And finally, these are all my opinion, and I didn't really feel like doing all that much research or putting some of the more obvious candidates out there like Call of Duty, so don't expect to find them on this list. Okay, I think that's everything. Yeah, okay, let's get going then.
Number 10.
Lego Franchise. This one hits close to home for me because I used to be a big fan of these games, but then I took an arrow in the knee. No, I'm just kidding. In general, the whole series is repetitive, and each entry in the franchise never really does anything to change that. Although the entire theme and level format might be completely different from game to game, they're all still interchangeable. Some of them tried to deviate from the usual format, like the Batman and Marvel Superheroes installments, and therein lies the problem. When your franchise is well known for being exactly the same every time, regardless of what theme it's based on, changing it is almost never worth it. I mean, the whole reason people were buying these games was to play the same thing over and over again in each LEGO version of various pop culture franchises. But then when they started adding voices, butchering major plot elements just to enforce the shoddy co-op gameplay, and completely changing everything that made the LEGO games popular, it should come as no surprise that the sales started dropping. Call me crazy, but if I wanted the Avengers, I'll watch the Avengers. So making a game that retells the same movie using minifigs and unnecessary voices without actually being the game of that movie is stupid. You'd be better off just playing with real Lego.
Number 9.
Guitar Hero Franchise. 2 words. Rock Band. That's right, what was once the only game of its kind got blatantly cloned and significantly improved. I still don't understand how Harmonix managed to get away with making Rock Band. It's so similar to Guitar Hero that I think most people thought that Rock Band was Guitar Hero 4. But then in retaliation, Guitar Hero World Tour came out and it became clear that they were two separate, albeit extremely similar games. I mean, come on. Rock Band even uses the same colors and features, the same everything as Guitar Hero. The only major differences between them is that Rock Band is more of a fun-based party game, while Guitar Hero is more of a challenging single-player game. You know, actually, these two games are the perfect example of that old saying, "This town ain't big enough for the two of us." And that's true, since neither franchise has had any new games released lately.
Number 8.
God of War Franchise. I've probably already talked about why the God of War game's story pisses me off, so I'll just briefly summarize it. In the first 2 games, it is well established that in order to kill a god, you needed to have a power that is equal to or greater than one. But every game that has been released afterwards has broken that rule and fractured the whole continuity of the story. God of War 3 is the biggest offender, but at least the game was actually decent. Chains of Olympus was boring and short-lived, and Ghost of Sparta was really good, but it had a weird story that seemed unnecessary. Ascension wasn't bad either, but it took place much later in Kratos' life than the commercials made us think it would. The online mode gets old fast, and really doesn't work as well as Santa Monica thinks it does. Long story short, the franchise has long since lost its original appeal, so unless they throw a monkey wrench into the next game, it will be just another God of War game.
Number 7.
Spyro the Dragon Franchise. Spyro started out as a solid adventure platform series with quest-based missions that were so diverse and cleverly crafted that even the ones you didn't like were tolerable. By diverse, I mean that one minute you could be on a scavenger hunt for golden statues, while the next minute you could be playing one-on-one hockey. All in all, Spyro used to be a great series that could appeal to everyone. Now, however, Spyro is a Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy action series. Although none of the modern games are outright bad, they're just not what they used to be. There are a few games that came before that change though, like A Hero's Tale, which included Moneybags as some sort of creepy Middle Eastern merchant. Wait, what? No! Moneybags is supposed to be a normal, sleazy brown bear. Oh, and then of course there's Skylanders, whatever the hell that's supposed to be. Anyways, in conclusion, none of the things that were good about the old games is left. Hardly any gems, no portals, no fodder, no humor, no speedways, no missions, no thank you.
Number 6.
Resident Evil Franchise. In my opinion, the Resident Evil franchise started on a downhill slope. The controls, camera angles, voices, and, well, gameplay in general was complete garbage. I don't think I'll ever understand how these games garnered a fan base, because, well, they suck. Like how Vampire Suck Blood, the original Resi games, sucked the sanity out of us. It took me 45 minutes to figure out how to move my character effectively, and a whole day just to get used to those idiotic controls. What kind of game implements a system where left doesn't make you go left? Left just makes you turn to that direction, and then forward and back are used to move in any direction as long as you use the left and right buttons to make you face that direction. See, I can't even talk about that without even going cross-eyed. Anyways, much to everyone's relief, Capcom eventually figured out that the fourth game should probably be different, and the changes they made have since turned Resi 4 into one of the top 10 games of all time, and everyone figured the legacy would keep going, but it didn't. Resi 5 came out, and it was nowhere near as good. The inventory, the merchant, and the large-scale levels were all scrapped in favor of a sloppy co-op function, and then Resi 6 came out, which brought back the inventory and featured improved co-op, but the whole campaign thing ruined it. The story is already bad enough, and splitting it up into 4 confusing chapters just makes it worse. For a better mental image, picture a mountain. Resi 4 is right in the middle, at the highest peak. All the games that came before it are on the left side, with the original being at the left base, and Resi 6 being at the right base.
Number 5.
Soul Calibur Franchise. When you think about what the purpose of making a sequel is, what comes to mind? Apart from making money, I mean. Well, to continue the story is probably the most major point. I suppose improving on the last installment by fine-tuning the game or adding new things is next. Off the top of my head, I can think of dozens of great franchises that have great sequels. Soul Calibur isn't one of them. After making the jump from the arcade to home consoles, the series followed most of these rules fairly well, except for the story, which Soul Calibur never really had to begin with. Don't bother arguing. You have no idea what the plot of the 4th or 5th games is any more than I do. And that's my point. After Soul Calibur 3, the installments have been progressively worse and worse. There's nothing to do, the game modes are even shorter, and now they're even getting rid of the series' most recognizable characters. Soul Calibur 6 needs to have character creation, Chronicles of the Sword 2, the original roster, team battles, and a whole lot more, or it will flop just as bad as the last 2 games.
Number 4.
Tony Hawk Franchise. I never liked the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games. All you really did was skate. And then the Underground games came out, and they included the old playstyle, rebranded as Classic Mode, as well as a new story-based mode. Kind of like Grand Theft Auto, only without the open world and sandbox elements. This new format was great because the old one is still present, so both new and old players had something to like about it. And throughout the next couple of games, the format stayed more or less the same, although the story and missions were sort of hit or miss. But then motion controls came to power, and since motion controls make everything better, the Tony Hawk franchise adopted the new craze, but forgot to make sure that their technology actually functioned properly. As a result, Tony Hawk Ride failed as much as the Titanic. Not only is the very concept of a skateboard controller stupid and impractical, but the motion controls don't even work. Ever since this fiasco, I haven't seen or heard of another game in the Tony Hawk franchise, and even if I had, I wouldn't care.
Number 3.
Final Fantasy Franchise. What an alliterative title that was. I know that I've already talked a lot about these games in my most disappointing video game sequels video, but now I can go into more detail. The way I see it, Final Fantasy has sucked hardcore since 10.2. The online game, Final Fantasy XIV, was so bad that they actually had to redesign and re-release it as a completely different game just to fix all the problematic issues it contained. Meanwhile, in the offline games, starting with Final Fantasy XII, Square Enix kept trying to change something that didn't need to be changed at all. Final Fantasy's battle systems have always been top-notch, until they mutilated it. I have no problem with removing the random battles and replacing them with encounters, but things like paradigm shifts, auto-battling, limitations in your party members, and who you can actually control, as well as the abolishment of the time-honored turn-based systems, have changed Final Fantasy for the worst. Not to mention the fact that Final Fantasy XIII's story is complicated, confusing, and convoluted. There's another alliteration for you. In an RPG where the story plays such an important role on the overall enjoyability of the game, you can't bring players into the game and start them in the middle. I played 13 for several days and I still had no clue what was happening. That's terrible game design. Square Enix doesn't seem to think so, however, because the universe of Final Fantasy XIII is planned to be included in a total of 4 games, none of which are prequels to help us understand the storyline.
Number 2.
The Duke Nukem Forever hype. To help you understand why I'm putting this so high on this list, here's a quick timeline of the Duke Nukem Forever hype. The game was first announced in 1997, it switched engines twice in 1998 and 1999. Gameplay footage was first shown at E3 2001. 2 weeks later, some guy claimed to have pre-ordered it. Everything gets scrapped in 2002. New gameplay footage was shown in E3 2006. A new teaser trailer was shown in 2007. In 2009, the developers fired the Duke Nukem Forever team, and then finally in 2011, the game was released after 15 years of development. Okay, so, after all that, regardless of how good or bad the final product was, there was just no logical way that it could possibly live up to all that hype. It's like getting a car as a present on your 2nd birthday and having to wait roughly 15 years before you can even use it. And then once you're given the keys, you find out that the car was a balloon and it popped when you tried to put the key in. Yes, I know that analogy made no sense. I don't care, shut up! We've been going down this hill for so long that I think it's time to look back on where we started, which is just an elaborate way of saying that it's recap time. Number 10, Lego Franchise. Number 9, Guitar Hero Franchise. Number 8, God of War Franchise. Number 7, Spyro the Dragon Franchise. Number 6, Resident Evil Franchise. Number 5, Soul Calibur Franchise. Number 4, Tony Hawk Franchise. Number 3, Final Fantasy Franchise. And number 2, Duke Nukem Forever hype. Okay, we're almost done, but as you already know, it's time for...
Number 1.
Sonic the Hedgehog Franchise. Yes, I know Sonic has recently made a comeback. In fact, that's the whole reason I'm putting it on this list. In my opinion, Sonic & Knuckles was the last great 2D game in the franchise. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were the first and so far only great 3D games. There were also a few decent installments on the Game Boy Advance, but pretty much every single other Sonic game ever made after that belongs in the dump. And while they're at it, throw that stupid Sonic anime in there as well. Anyways, after Sonic Adventure 2, the 3D games quickly started getting worse and worse. And then, in 2006, something horrible happened. To hardcore Sonic fans, what happened could be comparable to the destruction of the Twin Towers, only, without the death toll and legitimate terrorism aspects. 2006 was the year that saw Sonic the Hedgehog get released. Sonic 06 got released after about a month of work went into it. Afterwards, the next couple of games gradually started getting better and better until Sonic Colors went back to the series' roots and revitalized the franchise at the last minute. From then on, most of the games have been almost as good as the ones that originally made Sonic famous. And that is why Sonic is at number 1, because none of the other franchises on this list produced anything as bad as Sonic 06. And now it's self-promotion time! I have lots of other cool videos. If you like this one, might I suggest that you click that attractive gray button up there and subscribe, or maybe you want to watch some more videos first. Click this button to check out the Slash Raptor Show, click this one to check out Game On, or you can click this one to check out more countdowns. I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. See you next time. Bye!